Greetings, fellow captains. In a previous episode, we told you about the Japanese cruiser line. And in this episode, we'll talk about American and Japanese battleships. For many decades, battleships were the backbone, linchpins and superstars of any large fleet. Starting from the 20th century up until World War II, a country's image, the power of its industry, and its scientific progress were estimated by the number of its battleships. After the launch of HMS Dreadnought, the worldwide Dreadnought race began. This was the first modern technological race. The United States and Japan joined this competition at the same time and set out to catch up with the trendsetters, the British. Due to their special one-of-a-kind peculiarities, battleships of each country provide players with a unique style of play, quite distinct from that of other nations. Certainly, American and Japanese ships have many similarities, but they were the products of absolutely different approaches to shipbuilding. The Americans almost immediately adopted the all-or-nothing armor scheme. They concentrated the majority of the armor around the ship's citadel, her central section, housing propulsion and the main battery magazine, leaving her ends unprotected. In addition, American battleships were well armed and had excellent survivability, including outstanding firefighting capability. While inferior to the US battleships in survivability, the Japanese battleships were faster and possessed more advanced optics. Adopting British shipbuilding experience and drawing lessons from the Russo-Japanese War, Japanese engineers aimed at covering as much area as possible with armor at the expense of its thickness. They changed over to the American armor scheme only for Yamato. Tier 1 to 7 battleships of the American tech tree are pretty similar both in configuration and playstyle. Their low speed is the first thing that stands out. The US naval doctrine from the beginning of the 20th century held that operational range of warships was more important than speed. So the maximum speed of the battleships from South Carolina to Colorado is 21 knots. But such low speed is balanced by a highly sophisticated armor system that is noticeably superior to most ships of that time. Powerful and well-balanced main guns were another great advantage of the American ships. South Carolina and Wyoming have 12-inch in 4 and 6 two-gun turrets, respectively. The next higher ships, New York and New Mexico, have 14-inch caliber guns. Grouped in 5 two-gun turrets on New York, and in 4 3-gun turrets on New Mexico. Colorado follows the pattern and takes it a step further. She has 4 two-gun turrets with 16-inch guns. Japan chose a different development pattern. Their first battleship, Kawachi, was actually a continuation of the preceding classes of armoured ships and inherited their major disadvantages: slow speed and ineffective placement of 12-inch guns. But in their following projects, Japanese shipbuilders implemented the idea of a high-speed wing of the fleet, battle cruisers. Myogi, a completely Japanese project, and Kongo, developed and built by the British, were poorly armoured, but were fairly well armed with 14-inch guns. And in terms of speed, these ships were significantly superior to battleships from other countries. Created on the basis of the Kongo design, the Tier 6 battleship Fuso can boast reinforced armor protection and a main battery of 6 two-gun turrets, though her speed is lower. The Tier 7 battleship Nagato is the apex of Japanese shipbuilding of the early 1920s. She is armed with 16-inch guns, placed in 4 two-gun turrets, and has better armor than Fuso. And the battlecruiser Amagi at Tier 8, though sporting noticeably thinner armor, has 1 additional turret. The International Washington Conference, held shortly after World War I, restricted construction of new battleships. For this reason, the time lapse between Colorado and North Carolina at Tier 8 is more than 15 years. US battleship doctrine had changed during this time. As a consequence, North Carolina leaves behind all her predecessors in terms of speed. At the same time, North Carolina has an impressive battery of 9 16-inch guns in 3 turrets and stout armor equal to that of Colorado. In addition, North Carolina's anti-aircraft defense is far superior to that of the preceding ships in her branch and her counterparts from other countries. The famous battleship Iowa, the most technologically advanced class of US battleships to participate in World War II, developed from North Carolina. Having similar systems of armament, AA guns and torpedo defense as North Carolina, Iowa is better than her predecessor in terms of armor. This is not surprising, because Iowa's design was not constrained by the restrictions of the Washington Treaty and the Treaty of London. The Tier 9 Japanese battleship, one of the projects of the 1930s under the designation A-140J2, is called Izumo in the game. She is significantly different in gameplay from her predecessor, most notably in the unusual placement of the main battery artillery, resembling the British Nelson. In addition, whilst almost equal to Amagi in speed, Izumo is superior to her predecessor in AA artillery and has much better armor. Yamato is perhaps the most famous ship in the world, not only in Japan, and certainly deserves to be called the crown of the Japanese battleship branch. Yamato carries the most powerful guns in the game, 18-inch caliber monsters, and the thickest armor, up to 26-inch on the faceplates of the main battery turrets. This battleship can't be called fast and maneuverable, but she has fearsome AA guns and an excellent torpedo belt that gives her the ability to sustain many hits. But those 9 powerful main guns are the Yamato's great advantage. Engaging in a shootout with Yamato will likely prove deadly for any ship, including Yamato herself. Her American opponent, the Tier 10 battleship Montana, is developed from Iowa. She is different from her predecessor in her significantly reinforced armor and torpedo defense. Montana's gun caliber is less than that of Yamato, 16-inch, but as opposed to Yamato, she has 12 guns, 3 guns in each of 4 turrets. With them, she can equal Yamato in damage per minute. In addition, Montana is faster than Yamato. Overall, these 2 rivals deserve each other, and now fans of naval battle history will finally be able to see for themselves exactly how these 2 warriors match up in battle.
Yamato, a super battleship, a real sea monster with the height of a 17-story building, 72,000 tons of steel, 500 kilometers of welded joints, enough to wrap them around Japan and decorate it all with a bow. Building Yamato was like forging the ultimate sword, while everyone else was making machine guns. Why? This is a tragic story. The real-life Yamato never met a worthy opponent among other surface warships. Instead, she was met by almost 400 aircraft that tore her apart in 2 hours. She was at the top of the battleship evolutionary tree, but she reached this peak too late. By the time she did, aircraft carriers and submarines had changed naval warfare. The power of Yamato became legendary, but in World of Warships, this legend lives. Just look at this giant. How can this sea monster ever be sunk? Her side armor thickness is up to 410 millimeters. The main turrets are protected with armor plates more than half a meter thick. And look at those gorgeous lines. Yamato just slices through the waves. And that shape was not a whim of the Japanese designer's poetic souls. Her high bow and low aft ensure the best seaworthiness, and the rise at the center is necessary for more convenient arrangement of ammunition and structures. The slight sag between the center and the bow saves weight without any loss of durability. That hull makes Yamato the most durable warship in the game. It will require an entire squadron to deal with this battleship. She can withstand a torpedo salvo and keep firing from all guns. When she fights alone, the battle will become something like a scene from a Godzilla movie. When you're at the wheel of this ship, the most difficult thing about this monster is to wake it up. Just imagine, it devours 62 tons of fuel per hour. That works out to 130 tons of fuel per 100 kilometers. Stopping this Leviathan is as hard as accelerating or turning. The inertia of thousands of tons propels the ship forward. You have to plan all your maneuvers in advance, and don't even try to hurry. But there's no need to hurry. The Emperor doesn't pay attention to the annoyance of small destroyers and cruisers. The turrets traverse slowly, and the reload takes a long time. While the shells are flying, you can sit back and sip your tea. But when the shells reach their target… What? How can it be? Yamato should have torn it apart. Remember, Yamato was gigantic for a reason. She was built to carry guns of the largest caliber in the history of naval artillery, 460 millimeters. A shell of this caliber weighs as much as a car. In fact, this battleship could lob a shell out to 42 kilometers, literally beyond the horizon. A spotter aircraft would be needed to direct and adjust the fire. There are no maps of such large size in the game, otherwise it would be the end of the battle before you even got an enemy warship in your gun sights. In World of Warships, Yamato's maximum firing range is 26 kilometers. If you try to hit a destroyer at that distance, it will be able to sail a few circles around the base waiting for your salvo. However, destroyers can survive for a different reason. An armor-piercing shell hit, but it just flew in one side and out the other. If the enemy warship had been more massive and durable, the shell would have stuck inside and caused severe damage to its compartments. But here, it only caused a hole through the hull and a controllable amount of flooding. So when you fire at small targets, load HE shells. But should you waste such great power to destroy minor ships and aircraft? Of course, Yamato can do the job. She carries about 100 AA guns as well as 155mm secondary guns. All those weapons work quite well while you're focused on aiming your main batteries. So what's the best way to use those monstrous guns? There are two ways. The first is daring, and the other is convenient. Let's talk about the convenient way. Think where the main action will take place, and don't go there. Turn your side to aim all three main battery turrets in that direction, and support your team with mighty shots of 15 tons of steel per salvo. Your shells can fly so far, enemy warships just won't be able to reach you with theirs. The rest is a matter of your skill at leading your targets. And here's the daring way. Choose a flank and lead your team forward, protecting them with your armor. You must always be wide awake and plan out the maneuvers it will take to pass between islands, trying not to expose yourself to enemy torpedoes. Aim your main guns at the enemy flagship, while your allies keep enemy destroyers and aircraft away from you. Yamato is good in both roles. The path to her is a green wave. With every successive tier, Japanese battleships become bigger and bigger, and there are no hidden pitfalls. What could be a better reward for those who reach the top than firing the guns of the largest caliber in the world from the deck of the legendary battleship?